see you. I'm glad you could make it. And welcome back to Bookmas with me and the largest stack of books that I have ever seen beside myself in a video ever. Literally ever. But I think this is a testament, it's as high as my arm, to how much I really enjoy a long book, even if I run away from them more often than not. I have officially read 100 books this year. I think I'm up to 103 now, which is crazy. I have never read 100 books in a year, and I feel like I went into this year with a silent goal of 100 books, but I made my Goodreads goal 75 because I really don't love failing. I don't love it. It's not great for the mental health. And I feel like I can say with a pretty good amount of confidence that I'm probably not going to find another top book in the next 2 to 3 weeks. She says as she literally eats her words, and maybe reads her most favorite book ever in the next 2 weeks. We'll do this again next year, and we'll go December to December. That'll be our plan moving forward. The original idea, the original plan was to do a top 10 of 2024. I did a top 10 of 2023 on TikTok last year. I sat with this list. I sat with this list for a very long time. A list of 15. I sat with my list of 15 and I really tried to narrow it down, and I couldn't. We're doing a top 15 of 2024, and we're gonna get right into it, because if there's one thing I can do, it is write a college level dissertation on the books that I love with like all of the words in the English language. I could talk about most of these books, all of these books for hours. I will try and keep it short and sweet because I want you to read these books, not sit through a 4-hour movie where I just talk at you about how amazing they are. So this is my official top 15 books of 2024. I also thought about doing my top 24 of 2024, which I think would be fun. However, that would be a quarter of the books that I've read. At that point, it doesn't feel like top, you know? It just feels like the top quarter. Let's just get into it. None of these are in any particular order, any rhyme or reason for why they are ordered. If you were asking me to order this would be like asking a mother to pick a favorite child. Just be cruel and unusual punishment. Rebel Witch by Kristen Cicerelli. This is the second book in the Crimson Moth series. Heartless Hunter here in North America. Heartless Hunter walked, so this book could run. The things that this book does, I really don't have the words. I would tell you that this is a 5-star read. However, every single book in here is in fact a 5-star read. This is kind of a 5 stars from the year video. What Kristen Cicerelli did with this, I think, is so amazing. Sometimes it's hard to follow up a pretty good first book, and I finished Heartless Hunter and I gave it a 4.75, and I was like, there's something missing. I don't know what I'm docking the 0.25 for, but it didn't have 5-star feelings. This out of the gate had the most major 5-star feelings. You can tell that Kristen Cicerelli loves these characters, but loves them in a way to do their story justice, not just in a way that their scenes drag on or they just are talking forever or they're confessing their love forever. Like, she did these characters justice, and Brood and Gideon in this book, so good. And it mixed with the plot that we got. It's plotted very well. Like, we get little problems, little answers, little problems, little answers, and it strings through, but there's also like a thoroughfare of plot, and it's just, this was immaculate. This was truly one of my favorite reads of the year. I know that I just read it, but I can stand on that I will remember pretty much every single thing that happened in this book a year from now, which I feel like tells you a lot about how much I took in if the annotations in here do not tell you enough. The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. This is the second duology that is the Crown of Nyaxia series. From what I've gathered, she's doing 3 duologies in the Crown of Nyaxia world, which started with Serpent and the Wings of the Night, which was Rain and Araya, and there's going to be a novella in between all of them. And now this one is following Mish, which is Rain from the first book, best friend, his everything. I think the one thing Carissa Broadbent does that is so freaking cool, it really feels like she has all of these beautiful, amazing stories in her head. Like, if there's one thing that she can do, it is create a world and create a story that just feels so airtight that you are just like, it's impossible to put down. Like, you are seeing everything in the book. And I said that The Ashes of the Starkers King, it started slow, and I felt like I was like, am I slumping, or is this like taking a minute? But it was all so worth it in the end, and it feels like she has these ideas for stories in her head. Instead of making them a bunch of duologies or individual series, she decided to put them all on this same world with these characters that are just so different. Like, I didn't think she'd be able to do Enemies to Lovers twice in Serpent and Wings of the Night, and then again in The Ashes of the Starkers King, and it's the only time I've seen it executed well. Like, literally the only time I've seen it executed well. And then this one is just so different. You're basically going through the stages of hell with Mish and the love interest in this. If you love a high stakes fantasy that also has a really good line of romance, like, this is the perfect balance of both, and it is done to perfection. I got an advanced Kindle copy version of this and then the advanced physical copy, so I haven't gone through and annotated it yet because I think I want to do a reread before the next book in this series comes out. And there's just like no one I can think of to compare her writing to. Like, she's in such a lane of her own. Half the Soul by Olivia Atwater was such an unsung hero. That's a lie. I sang about this a lot. This was such an unexpected hero from this book. I read this in a random 24-hour reading video, and I could not stop raving about it. I cannot stop raving about it. I am currently still raving about this book. This does so much so well in such a short amount of time, and it tears at your heartstrings, and it's just beautiful. And I was shocked when I went to Goodreads and saw this wasn't like one of the most popular books ever, because it is so fun and it reaches such a wide audience. It is romantasy, but it's so light on the fantasy. It happens in our world, but it's Regency era. There's fairy and there's our world, and they overlap we don't really understand how they overlap, but like you can go from one to the other and they exist on the same plane. But no one in the real world can see fairy, and that's all you need to know. And you never ever do a deal with a fairy, except for our main character. Dora's mom did make a deal with a fairy and she sold Dora's soul. But when that fairy comes to collect, right? He comes to collect, and might I add, he comes to collect in a lot of coats, which means he must be very virtuous. It's silly, it's fun, but it's so unexpectedly heart-wrenching. It's so whimsical and fun. But when he comes to collect her soul, her cousin runs out and with a pair of iron scissors, and he only gets away with half of her souls. So Dora goes through life with only half a soul, only really half feeling things. There's like a sentiment in this book that she hears people talking about her and she puts them in the back of her brain and she thinks about them when she's alone, and she knows that it should make her sad, and it does make her feel some semblance of sad when she's by herself and thinking about it, and she knows that people are talking about her. She just can't feel things big. I don't have the words for what this series is. It's so not what you're expecting. It's so much bigger than you think it's gonna be, and I am the type of person that takes a ton out of a book, but this left me sobbing, absolutely sobbing. Now this one I needed to include in the list. I needed to, because it was a 6-star for me. It was such a giggly fun time, and I think about it a lot, but it is silly, and it's a hit or miss for people. Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Hear me out, hear me out. This would go on my hear me out cake, okay? This is so good. It's so good. I loved it. I also then went on and read other Omegaverse books. I'm not an Omegaverse girly. I'm just a Bride by Ali Hazelwood girly. Our main character, Misery Lark, is the daughter of the head of the vampires, and he's made a deal with the head of the werewolves to essentially marry her off for a political reason. I think what's so fun about this is like the world literally doesn't matter. Like, it's happening on our world, but there happens to be werewolves and vampires, and they make political alliances, and that's literally all you have to know. This was at the time the most I had kicked my feet and giggled while reading in the longest time. Like, I loved Misery and Low, and like the whole nodding of it all, like crazy, fucking crazy. I was not expecting that. When I flipped to that page, I was not expecting any of that shit to happen. However, did I have like the best time ever? Like, I can't fault this. Like, I can't think of a reason that I would not give this 6 stars, and I can't think of a time or a moment in this that I would change. If I were to go feral for a man, I felt Misery going feral for this man, and I was like, honestly, babe, I get it. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez is without a doubt, no singular doubt, not one singular thought of a doubt, the top romance read for me this year. I love the way that Abby Jimenez writes. Her books genuinely feel to me like they were just written for me. Like, yours truly was so good. It was immaculate. Part of Your World was so fun. I enjoyed it so much. I think that I just like specifically resonate with the way that she writes, like the way that she writes emotional depth in a fun little rom-com setting. Like, I think her and Emily Henry are the only 2 authors that like I genuinely pair together, because I feel like their books have the same like emotional importance in the romance genre. And what this book did to me, this is the most I've sobbed, I think, other than like Magnolia Parks. The ending of this book just got me. I think I read it in like 2 really good sittings, and I couldn't put it down. It's such a beautiful mix of a fun time, a rom-com time, with emotional depth and character depth that like you don't expect, executed so well in such a quick amount of time. And the way that this book ties the series together, this is what I mean when I say read every book in an interconnected standalone series, because other people that have read just this were like, it was good, I really liked it, but they don't connect to the end of this book. Like, I cried like a baby. This is like a prized possession. Like, if I ever meet Abby Jimenez at a signing, this is the book that I'm gonna bring. The way this wraps up the 3 interconnected standalone series, I could think and talk about this book constantly. Emma and Justin both have this curse where every single person they date goes on to find the love of their lives after them, and he posts that on an Am I the Asshole Reddit, and Emma sees it and messages him, and they end up talking, and they decide, what if we just date just for the summer and we'll cancel each other's curses and it'll be totally fine. And that just like, it doesn't do the book justice. It doesn't, but that is what it's about. The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. This has such a special place in my heart. I think Olivia Blake is like the Shakespeare of our times. I've said that before. I know it is dramatic, but I think she is. Like, the way that she writes feels so poetic and important, and this series is a series that if I didn't read and make videos all the time, I would read this series 3, 4, 5 times over, because I just know with every fiber of my being I missed so many details that were woven in perfectly in this series, and I know that I want to go back one day and reread this entire series. The way that she wrote this entire series, good God, how many times am I going to say the word series? The way that she wrote this, and the way the whole 3 books, trying to find a word that's not series, connect, like art, actual art. Like, I feel like Olivia Blake is not of us. I feel like she just has this ability to use words and to create stories that just like no one else has. This is such a dense dark academia series, and I think that like a lot of the nuance of this book would go over like a lot of people's head. Like, you really have to pay attention, and I know for a fact that I missed like a lot of the little things in this book, but it just felt so big and so important and so massive when I was reading it. And hey, I've never claimed to not take way too much out of a book, but the way that she writes and the way that the series wrapped up, and each book centers around a house of thought. So this one if I'm not mistaken, does center around like psychology, and it just feels like Olivia Blake has the answers to the universe. Like she knows something that I don't know and nobody knows, and she's embedding the stories for us to find the clues to the answers of the universe in her books. Dramatic, I know, but I genuinely stand on that statement. The Alice 6 series is following 6 Medellins, which are like the 6 most powerful witches, and every 10 years, I think it's 10 years, the Alexandrian Society admits 6 of them to compete for five spots to be a part of the Alexandrian Society. And the Alexandrian Library is a library that like was said to have burned down but harbors all of the knowledge in the world, and for the most part the people who are movers and shakers of the world, the leaders, the CEOs, all of that, they're a part of the Alexandrian Society, and they were at one point trying to be initiated. And just the character dynamics in this, it just felt really raw and real, and I could talk about this forever, so I will stop. However, if you're looking for something that is just big and massive, you have to pay attention, you feel accomplished when you finish it, and you just create theories and are like constantly thinking about a series, this is one you should pick up. Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. Okay, I could talk about this forever. I could. Magnolia Parks is my entire world. I have read the first 2 books 3 times. I have read the second 2 books twice, and I'm currently in my second read of Into the Dark. These characters make me feel things that I just don't even know how to put into words. I honestly have thought a lot about the fact that I used to say that this is kind of like Gossip Girl meets London High Society. It is, but it just like so undersells what this book is. I agree, it is totally toxic. It is not for everyone, but if you connect to these characters and you connect to this world, it leaves an imprint on you in a way that I cannot explain. They just have such a piece of my heart I really can't put into words, and especially in this book, it feels like such an accurate, real depiction of so many emotions. Like it feels like you're just looking in on these characters that have been through hell, been through so much, and their emotions just feel so real. It feels like Jess has lived 100 lives and she knows how to describe feelings in a way that I just think no one else can. Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. I love this book. I loved this so much, and I wasn't expecting to. I liked Love Redesigned. I liked the Dreamland Billionaire series. This is her magnum opus, at least so far. I'm so excited to get the next book in the series in 2025. I wouldn't change a single moment in this book. I thought it was so good. I thought it was worth all 500 of the pages. The slow barn was so good. The connection between Ellie, the nanny, and the kid, and like everything the kid is going through. This book had so many layers that I wasn't anticipating, but was wrapped up in this fun little Lake Wisteria bow. But it had a little bit of emotional depth that just like kept my heart going. I loved Raphael and Ellie in this. This is a billionaire romance where Raphael is the co-CEO of a company and Ellie is the nanny to his son Nico, and he's had his heart broken, and Nico's mom is like out of the picture, and he's damaged and she has her own traumas, and the way they work through them together and just like fit together very well, I just like wouldn't change anything about this book. Now, remember when I said Just the Summer was my favorite romance of the year? It is fully, full stop, tied with this one, and I think you know what I'm gonna say. That is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. The way that this book changed my life. This book changed every single thing that I think about the romance genre. Put it on its head. This is a magical realism romance based in New York where Clementine is very close with her aunt. It's always been her person. She never really connected with her parents, but she connected with her aunt. And her aunt has now passed away, and she gave Clementine her apartment in her will, and Clementine did not want to move in because she was like, it's just hers. It feels like hers, and all of the stories she told me, it's just everything about this is hers. Times are tough and she has to move in, and her aunt always told her the apartment would slip 7 years through time, and she was like, well, obviously everything my aunt told me wasn't real, but like maybe it is. This is like top 2, top 3 that made me sob this much ever in my entire life. I connected with this in a way that I cannot explain. It is written so beautifully, so poetically. If you're looking for something that's just gonna be so gripping and you're willing to turn your brain off, enjoy the poeticness of it, enjoy the magical realism of it all, enjoy like the soft, sweet love of it all, you have to love the writing portion of reading to really like this book. Ashley Poston has a way with words, like a lane of her own. When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker was probably my favorite romantasy of the year, and she was huge. She was, and she went by too fast. She went by too fast. I've seen so many criticisms of this book, and then I've also seen a lot of people love it. I think if you're an extremely emotional reader and an extremely visual reader, you will love this. I actually didn't have trouble grasping the world. Like I feel like in the first 20-30 pages, I could like really picture the world, and I feel like if you are a visual reader and you take the little visual nuances in a book and you like create a world of your own, it'll be pretty easy to grasp. If you're not a visual reader, I think this one would be harder, but I think the shining star of this book is the fact that the romance feels like a romance book romance, and the world is so big. It is the perfect coupling of a beautiful romance. I have no words for the romance in this. Like I felt like there was such intrinsic, big, burning, bright love in this, but then also the world was so unique and so cool. I don't even know how to get into what this book is about. We're following Rave, and we're on this world that doesn't spin. in. And there's lots of moons because the dragons in this world, when they die, they will go up into the sky and turn themselves into moons. And there's a lot of lore about the gods and how they connect to everything, and they created dragons, they created the world. And it's broken into 3 different places. I don't totally remember what they're called: the Scorch, the Fade, the Bird, the Freeze, something like that. But one is very cold and there's moon plume dragons there. One is temperate. All dragons can kind of be there. And then there's the Scorch, which is the part of the planet that is closest to the sun. Rave's job is basically to just not get caught, working as kind of like an assassin. And she's been captured, but someone comes save her. And just the plot twist in this, the romance, I just like, I don't have words. I think this series is gonna work out to be like one of the best of our generation in terms of a perfect balance of romance and fantasy. Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. There was no way that I could make this list and not include a Good Girl's Guide to Murder book, because Good Girl's Guide to Murder was one of my favorite series this year. It was such a shining star. This and The Naturals were the books that made me realize how much I love the YA true crime-esque genre. And I loved As Good as Dead. This one was just so well done. I think As Good as Dead went the way that it was supposed to go, but it also was a little bit crazy, but it needed to up the ante. And I love the way that that book ended. However, this is probably my favorite from the series. In the Good Girl's Guide to Murder book, we're following Pip, who decided to do her senior capstone project on a case that was solved many years back, but she doesn't think it was solved correctly. I just love anything where a teenager is just taking things in her hands, and the way that this story devolves and Pip's character devolves throughout the series, amazing considering it is YA. I think about the series all the time. Powerless by Lauren Roberts, the first book that I actually read this year, and it still reigns true as being a 6-star read for me. I thought Reckless was good. I thought it was okay. I'm excited for the 3rd book. I think if you read all 3 in succession, Reckless would have like more of a place to stand on its own. We knew it was going to be a breather book. However, this just like, it felt so big and so real in the moment, and I care about these characters in a way that I cannot explain. Like, I think about paying Kaiden constantly, and I am halfway through listening to the audiobook version of this as a reread just like for fun because of how much I like these characters. All the things that you want as a fantasy reader to happen in this, because she's one of us and she loves it the way that we love it. Foxglove by Adeline Grace. Now, if I had finished Wisteria before filming this video, I have a feeling that book would be on here. This series, just like, it was such an unexpected winner for me this year. Belladonna was good, and then going into this one, it just, I love this world. The way that she couples this like dark, gothic, the incorporeal existence of death world and story, and like big dark gray castles with like the softest depictions of found family, the softest depictions of love. Our main character Signa has always had this weird relationship with death, because the features of life in this world are actual characters. Death, fate in this case. Death kind of followed her, the incorporeal existence of him and her family members passing. And at the beginning of Belladonna, she ends up at Thorngrove, and she finally gets this feeling of like what actually having family is like, and like what actual love is like, and the perfect mix of whodunit with the romance and the gothic world and the fantasy of it all. It's perfect. It's also Regency era, and the way that the Regency era people talk to each other will get me every single time. God of the Woods by Liz Moore is one that I will have to stop myself in a minute or two, because I could talk about this for so long. I saw on Goodreads that this was Liz Moore's most ambitious story to date, and I just want to read everything that got her to this point, because this is so much more than you think it's going to be. It's listed as a mystery thriller and then historical fiction and literary fiction. I really think those could be switched, not necessarily in categorization, but in going into this, because it is so heavy on the literary fiction. It is so amazing. We're following a team of characters, a whole cast of characters, and I don't even want to call them characters because they're so real to me. We're following a cast of real life humans in the Adirondack Mountains in 1975, and we're on the Van Laar Preserve, which whenever I say the Van Laar family, think the Rockefellers, like one of the richest families in New York. And one morning in 1975, they wake up, and Barbara Van Laar, the daughter who was at the camp, and the kids never go to the camp, but Barbara's going through some stuff, so she's at the camp. We wake up one August morning and she's missing, and Bear Van Laar, her older brother, went missing on the Van Laar property a while ago, a good long while ago. Just the point of views that we are unraveling this case through. We're in the point of view of the counselor who only really has this job because she had the right connections, and we're having a conversation about class. We're in the point of view of the mom who was married off very young and is dealing with a lot, has been dealing with a lot, and her character arc in this story and her character portrayal in this story made my heart burn, hurt in a way that I can't explain. We're also in the point of view of the first female detective in the US in 1975 and how she's being treated and her character growth. And we're not just getting the true crime story as we're getting it through the eyes of people who also have kids, of people who have big emotions towards this, and we're having a lot of conversations that you don't even really notice you're having on class, on wealth. And this is what Ellen Hildebrandt is to romance, to the mystery thriller genre. If I could reread this book for the first time, I would, with every fiber of my being. It's long, it's dense, it's heavy, but it's worth every single second of it. And the font in here, she's small. She is small, but I annotated every single page in this guy. Yeah, every single one. Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the last book in the Natural series. I listened to it, and I think that I would attest that it is very good to be listened to. I think I read 1 or 2 of them, but then I listened to the rest. all in, story was so good. The third book in this series, it connected so well. There was no flaws. It was such a complex case to be following, but it was so good. And then this one carries forward on that, and I didn't want to leave these characters. I think what makes this series so good is we're following basically a bunch of teenagers that have natural proclivities to skills because of traumas that they've had in their lives, and the FBI is like, well, we don't really want you to go to university and like cope with that. We want you to keep those skills, such as natural profilers, lie detectors, patterns, geniuses. So we're gonna bring you into this naturals program at the FBI, and we're gonna basically have you working on cold cases, and we're gonna hone in on these skills so that you don't lose them. As soon as they get there, the cases actually tend up revolving around the kids a lot, and each book kind of deals with a different kid and like their trauma and how it relates to the case that they're working on. It's so good. And on that note, those were my top 15 books of 2024. I think I kept it kind of short and sweet. It was nice to film a video where I only talk positively about books, where it's not like a wrap up where like some of them don't hit. These are the books that I would wish to reread with every fiber of my being. These are the books that I would recommend with every ounce of my breath. So let me know if you guys have read any of these and what you thought of them, or if you're gonna be adding any of these to your TBR, because if you read like me, if we agree on a lot of things, I have a big feeling that you're gonna love every single one of these. So much so that I made a video telling you the top 50 books of the year, so that I was hoping that you would read them. And let me know what your top one or a couple of books from the year are, because you know we're coming into 2025 and I'm gonna need to make this list all over again. Love you. Bye. I'm so proud of myself for being like kind of concise about it. I mean, I wasn't all that concise, but like I could have ranted and raved about these for so much longer, and I didn't.